You command a ship full of the most dangerous, desperate, and feared men on the seas. Your black flag strikes terror into every merchant vessel that sees it on the horizon. Your name is whispered in the ports of the Caribbean. The great empires of the world have put a price on your head and sent their warships to hunt you down. You are a pirate captain in the golden age of piracy, sailing the warm blue waters of the Caribbean in the year 1718, at the very height of an era that will be romanticized and mythologized for centuries to come. But here is the first great surprise, the thing that the legends and the films almost always get wrong. You are not an all-powerful tyrant ruling your crew with an iron fist. In many ways, you command one of the most democratic, equal, and fairly run societies anywhere in the world of your time. A floating community with elected leaders, written constitutions, shared profits, and rights for every member that the ordinary sailors and workers of the world's navies and merchant ships could only dream of. Today, we're going to step aboard your ship and discover the real, surprising truth about life as a pirate captain in the golden age of piracy. Using advanced AI trained on the historical records of the golden age of piracy, the accounts and documents left by and about the pirates, the trial records and contemporary reports, and the careful work of historians who have separated the myth from the reality, we have reconstructed a day in the life of a pirate captain. To understand your world, you must first understand who you and your men really are, and why you turned to piracy in the first place. You and your crew were not, for the most part, born villains. You were made into pirates by a hard and brutal world. Most of your men were once ordinary sailors in the merchant ships or the navies of the great seafaring nations. And life for the common sailor in this age was, very often, a misery. The pay was poor and sometimes cheated. The discipline was savage, with brutal floggings and cruel punishments for the smallest offences. The conditions were appalling: terrible food, cramped and filthy quarters, disease and danger. The captains of the merchant and naval ships often ruled as absolute tyrants, with the power of life and death over crews who had few rights and little recourse. Many sailors were treated little better than slaves, and indeed your crew likely includes some who escaped actual slavery, for the pirate world drew in the desperate and the oppressed from many backgrounds. And so, when men who had suffered under this brutal system got the chance, by mutiny, by capture, by choice, to turn pirate, they seized it. Piracy offered them what the legitimate world denied: freedom, equality, a fair share of the profits, and escape from the tyranny of the ordinary sailor's life. Your pirate ship is, in a real sense, a rebellion against the cruel and unequal order of the world, a floating experiment in a freer and fairer way of living, run by and for the men who had been crushed at the bottom of the ordinary world. And this is why your authority as captain is, surprisingly, sharply limited. Aboard a pirate ship, the captain is not an absolute ruler, but, in large part, an elected leader, chosen by the votes of the crew, and able to be removed by them if he displeases them or proves incompetent. You hold absolute authority only at certain crucial moments, above all in the heat of battle and in the chase, when quick, decisive command is essential and the crew grants you full power to lead. But at most other times, the great decisions of the ship, where to sail, whether to attack, what to do with prisoners, how to divide the loot, are made not by you alone, but by the whole crew, often by vote, in a kind of rough democracy that was extraordinary for its age. To keep your power in check further, the crew elects another key officer, the quartermaster, who represents the interests of the ordinary crew, oversees the division of the loot, settles disputes, and serves as a counterbalance to the captain's authority. If you abuse your power, if you take more than your fair share, if you act the tyrant, the crew can vote you out and choose another captain, and you become an ordinary member of the crew again, or worse. So you lead not by terror over your own men, but by skill, by success, by boldness, and by the respect and trust of the crew who chose you and who can unchoose you. The pirate captain is a leader on sufferance, only as secure as his last successful voyage. The whole life of the ship is governed by a remarkable thing, a written code, the Pirate Articles. Before setting out, or upon joining, the crew of a pirate ship would draw up and agree to a set of written rules, the Articles, which every man would swear to uphold, a kind of constitution for the floating community. And these articles reveal just how organized, fair, and rule-bound the pirate world really was, in startling contrast to its lawless reputation. The articles laid out exactly how the loot was to be divided, and the division was strikingly equal. The captain and the senior officers received a somewhat larger share, but only somewhat, often just a little more than an ordinary crew member, nothing like the vast inequalities of the legitimate world, where a captain or owner might take everything while the sailors got almost nothing. The articles laid down rules of conduct, how disputes were to be settled, what behavior was forbidden, how the ship was to be run. Remarkably, the articles often included something like an early system of workers' compensation, agreed payments to crew members who were injured or maimed in battle, with specific sums set for the loss of an arm, a leg, an eye, so that a man crippled in the pirate's service would be provided for. The articles set rules about gambling, about fighting aboard ship, about the fair treatment of crew members, and about discipline. To break the articles was a serious matter, with punishments laid down for offences. This written code, agreed and sworn to by all, made the pirate ship a society of laws and shared agreement, a far cry from the chaotic, lawless den of cutthroats of the popular imagination. So, how do you actually make your living? Through the hunt, the chase and the capture, and here too the reality is more clever than bloody. Your goal is plunder, to capture merchant ships and seize their cargo, their valuables, their supplies, and sometimes the ships themselves. You cruise the busy shipping lanes, watching the horizon, hunting for prey. Merchant vessels laden with goods, sailing the trade routes of the Caribbean and the wider seas. When you spot a likely target, the chase begins, and you use cunning as much as force. You might fly false colors, the flag of a friendly or neutral nation, to lull your prey into letting you approach, only revealing your true black flag at the last moment. And here is a key truth about your trade. Your greatest weapon is not your cannon, but your reputation. Pirates cultivated a fearsome image, precisely so that their victims would surrender without a fight. The terrifying black flag, sometimes adorned with skulls, skeletons, or other images of death, was a deliberate piece of psychological warfare, a signal that meant surrender now and you may be spared, but resist and you will be shown no mercy. The most famous pirates deliberately crafted terrifying personas, theatrical and frightening, to maximize this terror, so that the mere sight of them would cause a crew to give up without resistance. For a fight was dangerous and costly to the pirates too, and a prize taken without a battle, its crew terrified into quick surrender, was far better than a bloody struggle. So you traded above all on fear, using the threat of violence to avoid, as often as not, the need for it. And when you are not hunting, life aboard your ship is a strange mix of hardship, freedom, and pleasure. Life at sea was hard for anyone in this age, and pirates faced the same dangers as all sailors: storms, shipwreck, disease, bad food and water, and the constant labor of sailing and maintaining the ship. But the pirate life also offered pleasures and freedoms that ordinary sailors lacked. When you had taken a good prize, there was feasting, drinking, music, and celebration. Pirates were famous for their love of drink and revelry, and a successful crew might carouse and enjoy their plunder with wild abandon. You sought out friendly or lawless ports and hidden island havens where pirates could gather, resupply, repair their ships, sell their loot, and spend their gains on drink, gambling, and pleasure, in towns and harbours that existed largely beyond the reach of the law. Aboard ship, when there was no prey and no storm, there was a rough camaraderie, a sense of freedom and equality and shared adventure, of men who had escaped the bottom of a cruel world and were living, for however short a time, as their own masters. For that was the great appeal and the great irony of the pirate life, that these outlaws and criminals, hunted by every law-abiding power, had created among themselves a way of living that was, in many ways, freer, fairer, and more equal than the legitimate world they had rebelled against. But the life was short, and the end, for most pirates, was violent and swift. For all its freedom and adventure, the pirate life was extraordinarily dangerous, and it did not last long. The great empires of the world could not tolerate the pirates preying on their valuable trade, and they hunted them down with growing determination and force. Naval warships pursued the pirates across the seas. Rewards were offered for their capture. Offers of pardon were extended to lure them out of the trade, and then the hammer fell on those who refused or returned to it. A captured pirate faced a grim fate, a swift trial and then execution, hanged in a public spectacle designed to terrify others away from the trade, their bodies sometimes left hanging in chains at the harbour mouths as a gruesome warning to all who sailed past. Most pirates of the Golden Age met their ends quickly, killed in battle, drowned, dead of disease, or captured and hanged. The career of even the most famous pirate captains was often shockingly brief, a few short years of freedom and plunder before the inevitable violent end. The Golden Age of piracy itself was brief, a window of a few decades when conditions allowed it to flourish before the empires crushed it. You live as a pirate captain, fast, free, and dangerously, knowing that your time is likely to be short, that the noose or the cannon or the sea will probably claim you before long, and choosing, even so, the brief, bright, perilous freedom of the black flag over the long, grinding misery of the life you escaped. That was a day in the life of a pirate captain in the Golden Age of piracy. A leader of desperate, dangerous men who had fled the brutal injustice of the ordinary sailor's life, and who had built, aboard their ships, something genuinely surprising. Not a den of chaos ruled by a tyrant, but a rough democracy of elected leaders, written constitutions, fairly divided loot, compensation for the injured, and rights and freedoms that the crushed and exploited sailors of the legitimate world could only dream of. A captain who led not by terror over his own crew, but by their trust and their votes, who hunted his prey with cunning and the weapon of fear as much as with cannon, who lived a life of hardship, freedom, adventure, and revelry, and who knew all the while that his time was likely to be short and his end likely to be violent. The reality of piracy was darker than the romantic legend in some ways, for these were real criminals who robbed and sometimes killed, and brighter than the legend in others, for their floating societies were, astonishingly, among the freest and most equal of their age. The Golden Age of piracy burned brightly and briefly, and was then crushed by the empires whose trade it threatened, its captains hanged, its black flags hauled down. But the legend never died, because at the heart of it lies something that has always fascinated us, the image of men who, in a cruel and unequal world, raised a black flag, threw off their chains, and chose to live and die as free men on the open sea, masters of their own fate, if only for a little while.